Hello, welcome to Script Club. My name is Luke Foster, and I get together with screenwriters from around the world for deep dive discussions of produced screenplays. Script Club is brought to you by Centerframe, a club for filmmakers where you can build your network, develop your skills, and get your projects made. You can find out more about Centerframe, including how you can apply to the British Short Film Awards, which includes the Best Unproduced Screenplay category, by going to centerframe.club. But today we are here to talk about the screenplay for Bob Trevino Likes It, and I'm absolutely thrilled to welcome Pilar Alessandra. Pilar is a story and script coach, the author of The Coffee Break Screenwriter, a professor in MFA screenwriting at the University of North Carolina School of the Arts, and she's host of the On the Page podcast, which is about to reach its 1000th and final episode. She trained writers at the Hillman Grad Program, Kevin Hart's Heartbeat Productions, Disney, DreamWorks, the NBC TV Writers Program, the CBS Paramount Writing Program, and more. And her students and clients have gone on to staff and showrun streaming and network television shows and have sold feature films to production companies and studios such as A24, Netflix, and Warner Brothers. In the past 5 years alone, clients who have been coached by Pilar Story to Script have won the Nickel Fellowship, the Austin Screenwriting Competition, Humanitas, and as was the case with Bob Trevino Likes It, the Jury Prize at South by Southwest. So welcome, Pilar. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you for having me.
And I'm also delighted to welcome back Helen Tompson, based in the southwest of the UK. Helen is a screenwriter, director, script editor, and creative consultant. She's developed projects through the Kay Mellor Screenwriters Lab, the network at Edinburgh TV Festival, the Screen Queens Horror Writers Lab, supported by BFI Network, and the Rockaberthy Writers Retreat, where she was awarded a scholarship. Her produced work include the commissioned short Brick by Brick and Like Buses, which is the joint winner of Centerframe's Get It Made competition, while her directorial work includes the play Gaslight. Alongside her creative work, Helen has adjudicated plays for the Somerset Fellowship of Drama and the Rose Bowl Awards, shortlisted scripts and films for festivals and competitions, and has taught screenwriting through the BFI Academy and Falmouth University. So welcome, Helen. Thank you so much for joining us once again.
Yeah, thanks for having me back. It's always great fun.
And I'm also delighted to welcome our Script Club members attending online, and to let you know how you can contribute and join in the discussion. I'm pleased to welcome back, after a short break last time, my colleague Nathan.
Hello, everybody. Great to be back. It's been good to be here, and also it's good to be doing them online again, isn't it, Luke? Because we've had a couple of in the real world script clubs, so we're all a little bit rusty, but I'm sure we're going to find our way around this next couple of hours. To get involved, please ask your questions in the chat. Any thoughts, any questions, anything Luke's talking about, anything Pilar's mentioning and Helen saying, just comment in the chat, and I will see if I can bring the conversation up to the guys whenever we take a break, and we'll discuss your questions then and there. Yeah. So please, any thoughts, drop them into the chat.
Great. Thank you, Nathan. So the screenplay for Bob Trevino Likes It was chosen for us to discuss by Pilar. I mean, Pilar, it's an absolutely beautiful film, but why did you feel this would be a particularly interesting script for us to look at?
I'm really proud of this movie. Tracy Lehman has been a client of mine for years and years. I'm talking over a decade. And when she first brought this idea to me in 2021, I was doing a new process called Story to Script. And that's how I consult now, where we break story, then assign deadlines. Then the writer will give me a chunk of pages. I'll consult on it. Then she'll rewrite the chunk, give me more and more and more until the script is finished. So it's a real development process as well as a script consulting process. And when we were done with this particular project, I just said to her, this is the one. This is the one. I mean, at the end, I was crying and I knew what was happening. You know, I had helped make it happen. You really, really feel this one. And I love its balance of sentiment and comedy. So that's why I wanted to suggest it. It did so well. She's an amazing director. She immediately directed it, and it won, like you said, the jury prize and the audience award over at South by Southwest, and a number of other awards after that.
So I think Tracy was on your podcast on the page, Pilar, and she actually sort of told quite a beautiful story, I thought, about how she came to write the screenplay. And she said that in her real life, her father used to get quite kind of mad at her over nothing really, and would disappear for kind of long stretches of time. And on one of those occasions, she tried to reach out to him on Facebook and accidentally befriended a man who had the same name as him by mistake. But that man was then very kind to her, and she struck up a friendship which lasted for 9 years, I think. And so to try to sort of come up with a way to sort of thank him and show him how much he meant to her, that she wrote this screenplay, but then sadly he passed away before he had a chance to read it, but she then got the blessing of his widow to continue with the film and to still tell this story. I mean, writers are often sort of told, write what you know, but often that tends to mean more kind of just draw on emotional experiences and, you know, things you might have been feeling if one of your characters is going through something that you might have gone through yourself, kind of just drawing on your personal feelings, or maybe take some sort of character trait from someone you know and give it to one of your characters, rather than necessarily writing something that's out and out autobiographical, because, you know, most screenwriters' lives aren't always that interesting really to sort of tell a whole story about. So I'm curious to know, Pilar, how did you feel about this being quite autobiographical when it was brought to you? And is that something, I mean, do you encourage writers to kind of maybe draw from their own lives, or does it that concern you that then maybe that they might hold back a little bit, or might be resistant to changing things that are different to how things actually really happened?
Well, what people should know is that one thing that made this script work is Tracy's openness to fictionalizing. All of this, every beat in it, did not happen to her. A lot of it was the what ifs of that. And where would you go with that? The bones of what happened, yes. But some specific things like plumbing and camping trips were things that she had to imagine. It was interesting, the minute that she was pitching this to me, my first reaction to her was, wow, it's so weird that we have the same dad, because some of the experiences she shared with that father, I'd also had similar experiences. There was, that father is more universal to audiences than you would think. So she was able to step outside of every specific thing and talk and write instead about, you know, where she was going to go with this, and the ways this character with this father and this father figure, what they would do next. That openness really made the script work.
And Helen, how do you feel about autobiographical material? Do you draw from your own life in your own work, or do you tend to sort of more steer clear of anything that might feel too personal?
I think we as writers, we all draw from our own experiences. That's, you know, there's got to be something about why we write in the first place and what we write, and how you tap into that is something that happens as you develop further as a writer. So I guess the difference is that you're writing from the experiences, not about the experiences. And usually that's where the two things sort of get a bit lost in translation. A lot of people will try to dramatize real life, and it just often isn't quite as dramatic as we think it is to other people, and fitting it into maybe a more narrative structure, maybe making the mentor die, maybe they didn't die in real life, maybe this scene happened actually later and it needs to happen earlier so that we understand it more when it gets to that point. Usually dialogue as well is a lot more convoluted and there's less subtext. So I think adjusting those true events is something that requires real stepping back and looking at it from that 360 view, and just trying to translate the experience, as Pilar has said, in a relatable way for other people. And I too found quite a lot of relatable themes that came up in this particular film, and it was just a bit like, oh, hang on, this is telling me that this isn't okay, this kind of relationship. Maybe I should be thinking about these kind of relationships in different ways. And it was a bit of an exchange, and I really love that when a film makes me really think about my own life and how I might react in it. And I think that is the key to translating an experience into something that's relatable. So you're writing from it, not about it.
You know, as you're asking me to take another look at this, I was realizing there aren't a lot of movies about grown women and their fathers. There's a lot about women, grown women and their mothers, or fathers and sons. But this is also its own sort of specific experience. And there's so many stories to tell, of course, but we don't always focus on women and their fathers. And they need a father as much as they need a mother. And I think that's also what makes this special, universal, and you can take the real and you can fictionalize because it speaks to so many.
And you were saying, Pilar, and you sort of worked on this with Tracy as part of your story to script process, and where people tend to write more in kind of chunks at a time. So what kind of stage and state was this project and script when Tracy first brought it to you?
It was the idea. It was, this is what had happened. These are some of the ideas she had for fictionalizing it to get to these emotional points that she wanted. We created a very loose outline. I kind of believe in keeping it loose so that writers can find story as they write. And my job along the way was, of course, to maybe, give notes on the writing and tighten things and edit. But also what I found us doing a lot was rearranging puzzle pieces sometimes. For example, the camping scene, we was going to be earlier, and we really needed to build to that. To have these two strangers suddenly on a camping trip was not going to work. And things like, well, how would that relationship build in a very father-daughter kind of way? We had to talk about what are the things that you want from a father? What's a father supposed to do? And, we talked about father's supposed to help you unclog your toilet. So having something like that before we get to sort of these bigger bonding moments, the arc of that was a lot of the work that was done too. A lot of mixing and matching and rearranging and puzzle piece switching.
So I think we should it'd be nice to sort of actually have a look at a few little moments from the film now. So I'm just going to play just a few clips really from, this is more sort of towards the beginning of the film. We meet Lily Trevino, a lonely live-in aide who has a strained relationship with her father, Bob. When Lily ruins a date her father's on by mixing up his girlfriend with other women he's seeing, he disowns her.
You know what? You're done.
What? Done? No!
As her father won't talk to her, Lily tries to connect with him on Facebook, but she befriends a different Bob Trevino by mistake. To Lily's surprise, the other Bob likes her Facebook posts, and the two strike up an unlikely friendship.
She ran off when I was little, and no one seems to know where she went. She got into drugs and, well...
Odd. So I can bring up some of the pages actually from some of these early sort of scenes that we were just sort of looking at. We saw a few clips of. So there's this sort of scene here where we see Lily and her dad when he's on a date with someone, and but she kind of gets her father's date mixed up with one of his other dates, and that causes a problem, and then the date then sort of leaves kind of in a bit of a huff, and then Robert's kind of angry with Lily that he sort of disowns her completely. And there's this sort of, I love this line here: "I'm tired of you ruining my life. Go ruin your own life." But I wanted to ask, you, Pilar, really about tone and because Lily, you know, she's suffered some anxiety, she suffered some depression. Mum was a drug addict who left when she was very young. She was brought up by a father who was pretty kind of awful to her. But the film never gets kind of too kind of bleak, and it actually stays quite light and comedic, even in some of the little moments we were looking at there. But it never really gets too kind of schmaltzy or overly sentimental either. So was the tone something that you discussed quite a lot in your development sessions, and how did you think Tracy managed to kind of just keep this very nice sort of tone where it just sort of struck a fine line between the comedic moments and the more serious moments and the more kind of heartwarming moments?
Well, anyone who's worked with me knows that I am the sentiment police. I will never let you indulge in backstory, sort of get carried away with victimization. You know, I'm a hard ass that way. Tracy, you don't really have to worry about that much because she has this wonderful dry sense of humor that comes out without her pushing for it. I think what works about that scene that you just showed on the page, the place where she gets mixed up, she gets confused with the different women that her father is dating on Facebook. And she is trying to help by reciting their stats to them. That's the game of it. Like, oh, you have a son and you do this. And she's saying all the wrong things and ultimately screws it up for her dad. So the game of that, the comedy of that, is really what that scene is about. And then it lands on, I never want to talk to you again. So that's the trick of it, is to keep people sort of laughing and engaged and the bizarre amusement of the whole thing. And then, boom, the rug is just ripped out from underneath you. This is an overreaction to a mix-up. And now we really feel for her, even though she's the one that made the mistake.
And Helen, what did you particularly enjoy or thought was very interesting about some of these early scenes?
Yeah, there was a definite theme that was sort of running throughout this this film, and it rather cleverly, I thought, it was reflected in the character of Helene, who's Robert's date in this scene. So the sequence sort of really shows that Lily doesn't see her dad for who he is. She's sort of looking at him through rose-tinted glasses, and she does the same thing with Daphne, who's the girl that she cares for. She doesn't sort of see that person either very clearly, and I think in that moment you get to really see what her want is, because and how it's also really removed from her. She wants her dad, but she needs to understand that this isn't the dad that she's craving, and she can't see him for who he truly is. He gets really frustrated about that, and so therefore he leaves her. So her reward for not seeing clearly is his withdrawal. Her desire is removed because she is obstinately not seeing him. And Helene, the date, sees straight through him straight away, doesn't even waste a second, doesn't even get to the first course. She's like, no, I see what you're doing. You're dating other women behind my back. I'm out of here. And Robert is annoyed because Helene can see straight through him. And Lily, of course, is the only one in his life who doesn't see him for who he truly is, which is why he keeps returning. So it's this, I thought that was a very interesting theme, and it comes up again later in a different way when you meet Bob. And of course, it's just a repeating motif that she needs to see more clearly, even herself, this whole self-abandonment. And it's just very cleverly laced into that scene, this want, this need, and what the actions or the consequences are for her, the way she fails to see him.
I'm just going to bring up a few more of the pages here, because obviously, we're just sort of talking about with Lily and Robert, and then when Robert then disowns her, and then we also just sort of show just a little bit of a clip there of the subsequent scenes after this, when Lily was been trying to sort of reach out to her father after he disowns her on Facebook, and then inadvertently connects with this other Bob Trevino. And then there are these little sort of scenes here, which you saw a few little clips of, where she first sort of reaches out and starts asking him if they're related, and they start sort of talking about their backgrounds. Bob here talking about him coming from Mexico originally, and then Lily just sort of talking about her background being Spanish, and then they sort of start talking a little bit about the fact that they both kind of lost their mothers in a way, that Bob's mother passed away, and then obviously Lily sort of misses her mother as well. When I was reading the script, so I read the script and then watched the film, and I to be honest, I found myself picturing Bob Trevino as being a lot older actually initially. I think probably because I was just thinking of my own father and how old he is, and then at one point I was thinking I'm picturing the wrong age here, and I had to go back and check his age, and thought, he's only actually in his 50s, and there's not, the age gap between them isn't actually kind of huge, really. It's because if she's 25 and he's in his 50s, and I'm quite curious to know, Pilar, because there's no, even though she's obviously lonely and she's single, and he's kind of just about in the ballpark of the younger woman with the older guy, and it could have gone in a more of a romantic direction or something like that. And there are a few sort of people around them do raise a few eyebrows about their relationship, but it never goes that way at all whatsoever. It all very much sticks very firmly in a father-daughter relationship. But sort of Tracy could have just made him, could have taken that out of the equation completely and just made him in his 60s or something, rather than making him a little bit of a younger man. So was that ever sort of discussed? Did that ever come up in discussions at all? Or was it always just a question of, oh no, this is just going to be a strict father-daughter relationship?
The age did not come up. I think the age might have been modified per the casting. Okay. But regardless, a father-daughter relationship was always what she was going for, with never even a hint of, oh, could this go into a romance, ever, thank God. Now, the balance of that was tricky. And it is very specifically why there's a scene right up front where Bob's wife says, hey, this person might be fishing. I wanted you to make friends, not friends with a young woman on Facebook. Goes through all of the things. And he has a discussion with her to work it out and say, this is what I think this girl needs. And that way it's not a secret. It doesn't feel like a sexy secret. It's another reason why that bonding had to be very practical and over time, unclogging a toilet, not going camping right away. Okay, there had to be no shades of romance in this, because yes, a relationship like that could either be perceived as inappropriate or be portrayed as inappropriate. So I don't think it was the age. I think it was the focus of the storytelling and what needed to be covered to make sure that the reader never goes there and the audience never goes there.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. When I was watching it, there was a degree of me that was almost expecting it, and I knew what the plot was. And so I think reading it, it felt different, but when you watch it, it feels a little bit different again from the script. And I felt this unease about whether this was going to, and I think it's just because we're so used to seeing older men and younger girls that they can't have a platonic relationship. And I was very aware of my own expectations and prejudices whilst I was watching this, and it was really refreshing to be given an emotional performance that wasn't going to feed that, and it certainly in the writing of it, it's handled very, very carefully, and it doesn't come across that way. But visually, I think putting it into production, and I think the title as well also just gave me this kind of, like, we've got a girl who's vulnerable. She's clearly got a lot of issues, especially around her dad. She's seeking that father figure. There's so much room for her to be taken advantage of. Did I know Bob enough to trust that he wasn't going to do that? Was Janine's reaction to Bob wanting to go camping and all of this stuff, was it reasonable based on? And I think if it was a TV series, you'd have enough time to perhaps really cement those expectations of those two characters, and in a film it's much harder. And I feel that it was all in the payoffs. It was all in those moments where you're like, you could go down a romantic route, but they don't, and it's actually very cathartic for Lily and releasing emotionally. And you can only really empathize in that moment with how she's reacting and feeling, rather than thinking about what perhaps Bob may or may not be thinking. So it was I found it a real interesting exercise for me as a writer to look at the two ways this script and the production made me feel about that particular question you posed there, Luke.
But I would also like to add that I think this is why we need more of and need to normalize women and fathers on screen. Because every time we have a grown woman and a father on screen, and it's a good relationship, it's also you're so beautiful. I'm walking you down the aisle at your wedding and presenting you to a man. There's always that kind of putting them on a pedestal, slightly over-sexualizing them, as opposed to sort of the relationship I see with the man I married and his children. It's not like that. It's being a dad. Being a dad is helping somebody, caring about them, talking to them, and if we saw more of that, we wouldn't be so weirded out by the idea of this, So I do think we bring our stories in from other movies. And yes, I could imagine how that would make everybody feel a little stressed out. But it was important to put people at ease right away with this relationship because it is a healthy one.
I see we've got people from sort of tuning in from all around the world, actually, which has been nice to see. We've got people from Italy and Brazil, Malaysia, South Africa, Los Angeles, I think I saw there, and Brighton as well, which is always nice to see. But please do, if you have any questions, I see we've got a couple already. I think we'll bring Nathan up a little bit later just to ask those. But please, if you have any questions you'd like to ask, please do put those in the chat. I think it'd be nice to sort of just to have a look at just a few more shots from the film. So this is kind of more towards really the middle after Lily and Bob Trevino have sort of started to build up a bit more. As Lily gets to know the other Bob Trevino and meets him in person, she learns that he and his wife lost their young child. Bob invites Lily to go camping, where she reveals her father took away the dog she loved after she didn't pick him up properly, and now she's afraid of being around animals.
I picked him up by his front legs. He yelped. My dad saw the whole thing, so he yanked him from my arms and said, clearly you don't know how to take care of an animal, so you can't have him.
On the way back, Bob takes Lily to a shelter where he encourages her to pick up and dance with one of the puppies. Watching Lily with the puppy encourages Bob to face his own fears, and he finally talks to his wife about their son.
This page is all his favorite color. Do you remember how his eyes would light up when he saw green?
Got a weird loop there on the clips. I don't know what's going on with that, but I can bring up the script pages again for those little scenes that we were just looking at there. And this is where we see Bob and Lily are going camping, and then Lily starts to share that she suffers from anxiety or depression, and she says here, sometimes I feel so broken. And then they start sort of talking about animals, and Lily shares this story here about how she had this dog called Charlie that her father then took away from her after she tried dancing with Charlie. And then there's a lovely line here from Bob here where he says we're all a little bit broken, and I think one of the things I really loved was that, I mean, the story could have just been about Lily, who needed a father, just sort of imposing herself on somebody else. But instead, I think what's great is that but you've got two characters. You've got both Lily and Bob, who are both a little bit broken and both have issues that need to be resolved. And they kind of like resolve each other's issues, really, in a way. And that Lily needs a father, and Bob is someone who needs to be a father because he lost his son and never got to be a kind of father to someone, and they both kind of solve that sort of problem in each other, really. And I think you see that really nicely encapsulated in these script pages here, because obviously Lily has told Bob the story about Charlie, and then he then takes her to an animal shelter here, just to sort of try and help her overcome that wound and resolve what happened to her in the past. And then without her really even knowing it, really, just that whole experience then sort of helps Bob in this sort of scene here, helps him overcome, or start to sort of find some kind of closure when he gets back home with Jeannie about the loss of their son, when he then asks her to show him the scrapbook that Jeannie's made, and they start to sort of talk more about their son for the first time. I mean, Pilar, what worked sort of particularly well for you in these sequences, and particularly from a kind of a screenwriting craft perspective, what did you think worked well?
Well, you can see that some of those are sort of yellow and goldenrod pages, which means that there were some changes after I had seen the script that were for production. And, I think that those changes seem to have them speaking more forthrightly about it wasn't your fault, or here's a Spanish phrase that will inspire you. And so I do think that where the sentiment police here might have gone, hey, wait a minute, are you sure we're not going over the top? The fact that they added that and just said it was very sweet, and and again keeps the stress out of it. Because when you go to the puppy scene, there should be a warning, like bring a box of tissues, because you're going to lose it. You're going to lose it with that. I do love also a little bit of the improv that the actors seem to do with kind of, dancing with the puppies and bringing some joy into it. It's not just her bursting into tears with a puppy and finally being able to do this. It's about finding the fun that she could have had as a child. And I do really like those scenes for that reason.
Yeah, and I think where for her to really see the joy that she's missed out on makes one of the ending scenes where she's confronting her dad and she finds out about the dog that he'd given the partner even more of a blow, that he could just give this person that he barely knows a dog, yet take something that meant so much to her away. And again, here we are, foreshadowing that moment, because Bob is giving her something that her father just didn't see. And it was a really lovely moment. And I think it was all of the shedding of the identity of herself that she had been carrying for all these years. And even though she's very young, because of the snippets we get of her life story in that counseling session, you get this sensation that she's actually lived a longer life than her dad. She's experienced more than she should have ever done by that age. So to take her back to being that 10-year-old or 9-year-old and give her that moment back, I think, it's going to make me emotional. But that's the thing that really got me, and it took her so much. I mean, kudos to the actor, it took her so much to overcome that. It wasn't just oh my God, a puppy, I'm cured. It took so much coaxing, and it was just such a really deliciously paced moment, I thought.
Agree.
And Helen, I mean, actually, you mentioned the therapist scene. I could only pick 3 scenes really, and I had to pick some that sort of coherently linked together with the story. But I'd have loved to have been able to show some bits from that therapy scene as well. That's kind of great. But how did you feel, Helen, about the idea that you had 2 characters kind of equally broken as each other, really, rather than, was that kind of quite refreshing for you, rather than it just being, this is the protagonist and this is the problem, and there's one person who helps them solve that problem, but actually, having the 2 sort of really kind of solving each other's issues?
Yeah, I mean, they were on the same spectrum of grief in a way, weren't they? They're both grieving for sort of Bob's grieving for not being the father that he wanted to be, and Lily is grieving for a father that she never had. And in that, Bob is the two things that really set them off against each other, which once I saw it, I just couldn't unsee it in the script, was how Bob would, he could see people for who they are. He could see Lily for who she was, even though, you know, he was just reading a few exchanges on Facebook. You know, he could see his boss for who he was. He could see his wife for who she was, sorry. But Lily didn't have that skill. She wasn't emotionally frozen, but Bob was emotionally frozen. So they had a perfect exchange moment, which sort of culminates at that midpoint in the camping scene, really. He expresses his grief, and from that he goes home and does something about his grief and his wife's grief, because he wants her to feel seen as Lily was seen. So I felt that it was an exchange. You know, they started at the opposite ends of the graph and they met in the middle at the apex. And I just felt that was really very, very brilliant writing, to have those two characters in that way, to meet in that way.
I think you really hit on something that Tracy would be really happy about. It was a discussion that we had, which was, how can these characters help each other? If you just get into that like paternal role of just teaching, right? And she's just absorbing and getting better, you know, the power dynamics are all imbalanced. But the idea that she had something to teach him was also important. And the way that was weaved in was purposeful. So I'm really glad that you picked up on that.
Yeah, that was beautiful.
So I think our chat's kind of exploded slightly into life, and we have quite a lot of questions now. So I was wondering if Nathan can come up and just let us know what people are saying and ask a few of these questions.
Yeah, it really has sprung into gear. I love this question from Diogo. Lily's love life is in disarray. Was it added to the story to make sure she was romantically unavailable? She also needs some fatherly advice on that issue, no?
So what do you mean by romantically unavailable?
I wonder if it was because you've got this Thad guy constantly messaging, sort of getting her name wrong and stuff like that. But I actually saw that as a perfect reminder of her flaw, that she still can't see this person for who he is. It's so obvious, isn't it, that he's an absolute twat, sorry. But, you know, like, and yet she can't see that. She'll still apologize for his behavior. And it comes up at just the right moment, I think, when she's waiting like a puppy for Bob's interactions. We get a message come up from Thad saying, "Are you still up?" or, you know, or "Hi Heidi," or something like that. And it's a reminder to us that she still can't see people for who they truly are. So I don't think it's even about relationships. I mean, yeah.
And she's a people pleaser.
Yes.
That's why that's the first scene that we see is her saying, "Oh, it's a, you know, oh, haha," to a terrible text that he sends her right up front. She is always trying to please other people. She's never thinking about herself. She wants so much to be loved and approved of. So I guess, yes, in answer to the person who asked the question, I suppose her being, you know, in a relationship that was not working was something that did help take romance off the table. But I also want to stress again that romance was never on the table. You know, the desire to not make this creepy was, but never was it a, hey, you know, what if they, never. I just want to be clear.
Next question, Luke.
Yes, please. Yes.
Okay, so how do you not go into analysis paralysis? Let me push this up on the screen. Against yourself when writers you know, like, and trust all share the consensus that it's the best script you've ever written? Of course, this probably goes out to the writer.
Oh well, I have to say I don't trust it when people say this is the best script ever written, because you could show your script to 10 people and they'd all have something different to say about it. So I am always incredibly cautious of people who just gush praise about, like, yes, accept, you know, you're showing them because you believe in your work, you know that the story is working and you believe in the characters. You have to have that self-belief, otherwise why are you doing what you're doing? So what you want to know is what works for someone. So if they can't explain why it's the best script that they've ever read, then, you know, then it's not. So I would ask for receipts. I would want to see evidence. Like, tell me.
Well, I would like to argue the other end of that for a second, because I have worked with clients and gotten the script has gotten to a point, much as it did with this, where it was, this is working. This is meeting your intentions, right? This leave it alone. Leave it alone. Because I have watched writers who go, yeah, it does seem right. I must have screwed something up. I'm going to go through, get 3 other reads, and I'm going to completely redo it all over again, and it just starts falling apart. So when a script does meet your intentions, it's what you envisioned, and it feels right, let the next round of notes come from somebody who is going to pay you for it instead. And I think writers have to trust that. They have to say, yes, it's what I wanted. One thing that's wonderful about Tracy is she finds joy in completing her vision. She knows there will be tons of rounds from people who are going to pay for it, who want to distribute it, right? Actors, whatever. But when she's done, she'll say, yeah, okay, that's what I imagined. Time to move on. I've watched it and I admire it. And I think it's okay for writers to take that kind of control and be okay with the script being okay.
Time for one more, Luke?
Yes, let's have one more.
We have a bunch of questions just come in from Jolie 4586, but I think I'll do one now, and we'll go back to some of their questions later on in the next break. But since the plot relies heavily on text messaging, how does the screenplay keep the visuals and pacing high?
There was a lot. If you see the script and you see the movie, there's a lot of just going right back and forth, always getting the emotion of somebody at the same time, keeping it short. The movie itself had them actually verbally saying things out loud at the same time, so it didn't just get to be text on the screen. So I think that's how it was accomplished in the pages, but also on screen.
Very good.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Nathan, for coming up. And let's please keep the questions coming in, and we'll bring you up a little bit later just to ask some more. But I want to just sort of move forward and just look at one final little group of shots, really, just from the film. So this is more, much more towards the end. So in one of the more sort of climatic scenes, I guess. So I'm just going to play that. There is something a bit odd going on with our clips, as he sort of starts playing the clips late and then loops back round and plays the beginning bit. So if it does that again, just imagine that the bit at the end was actually the bit at the beginning, if you can. But let's sort of play that now and see what happens. After Bob stops answering her calls and messages, a worried Lily goes to his house, but she's arrested for trying to break in. She's forced to call her father and has to spend the night in his trailer. She discovers he cut her out of family photos, as a woman he was seeing didn't want to date someone with kids. He even bought the woman a puppy, but can't remember the dog he took away from Lily.
You took Charlie away from me, and you gave this woman a puppy?
Furious, Lily finally lets out her pent-up anger towards her father. Yeah, it actually worked that time. I think we seem to have lost Pilar.
Oh no!
So hopefully we will get her back. I can bring up some of the script pages here actually, and that we were just looking at there. So this is from the scene we were just sort of looking at. So this is the scene really towards the end when Lily has to go and stay at her father's house, and so she has to go and stay at her father's house, and she obviously then discovers that she's been cut out of these sort of family photos, and then she finally confronts him about his sort of behavior kind of over all these years. And I thought there's some really, really nice callbacks here, I thought, to things that happened kind of earlier, because obviously, as I think you mentioned already, Helen, you get the callback about the kind of the puppy and the sequence we already kind of saw there, where not only does Robert, for the trauma it caused Lily, he doesn't even remember that he got her this puppy and that happened, but then he also got this other lady who had cut Lily out of the photos had actually got her a puppy. And Pilar's back, I think. Yes.
I was there the whole time. It was very strange. I got turned off. Sorry about that.
That's okay. So yeah, we were just sort of looking at these, looking at the script pages, really. So I was just saying, there's some lovely callbacks, I thought, in this whole little scene. So we obviously get the callback to the about the puppy there, but then also there's some other just sort of nice little kind of more subtle moments, really. I thought there where just trying to find my little bit here, where sort of this bit here, really, because there was a scene in the therapist scene, a moment in the therapist scene we talked a little bit about earlier, where Lily sort of talks about whether it be cathartic to kind of like smash throw everything off a table and smash it, and she'd only have seen people do that in movies, but you get the insinuation that it's maybe something that her father used to do as well. And she sort of talks about that earlier, and then she does it here. And then there's also that scene in the rage room earlier where Lily can't kind of bring herself to like let all her anger out and scream, even though Daphne's encouraging her to do so. But she does do that in this scene. And then there's even a little bit here. I think you mentioned about self-abandonment, Helen, earlier, but there was a sort of, again, when she was waiting to see the therapist, there was this slightly ludicrous video playing about self-abandonment that Lily comments on. And then also in this scene, then she also talks about her own kind of self-abandonment there, really. But Pilar, I was going to ask you, when you were sort of helping Tracy develop this, even though the story ostensibly is about Lily and Bob Trevino, was it always kind of the intention that it would maybe culminate in Lily confronting her real father? And did you feel it was essential that she did so here?
That was something that was always part of it, yes. And she does need to do that to move on to be the person that she needs to be, right? To stop trying to gain his love constantly when this is somebody who's not giving it back. And Tracy was very big on, this is about your found family, and that you can find those things in people who are giving you love. So she needed to walk away from him so that she could begin healing herself. And so, yes, that script, that scene was always part of it.
Yeah, I'd agree. It works perfectly. You need to have that. And there's a scene actually in the script which I think has been admitted in the film, where she cries, and I think it's removed because it comes too early, and we need to see that sort of acceptance a bit later. Mm-hmm. But I think especially when Lily sees the photos, she's physically sees the way that her father sees her as this regretful thing he doesn't want in his life. And the irony of Robert is that he has his own need for affection, and he's trying to fulfill with all these women. So he's ironically showing us that he's a man standing in front of a banquet with Lily wanting to give him that affection, and yet he's starving. He's intentionally starving himself. And you couldn't set up, the inciting incident of him leaving her and rejecting her without the conflict of her challenging him about that rejection. So it's inevitable when you look at that inciting incident and the conflict that will come. They are inevitable.
Yes, I agree. I would like to say something about my own father for a second, because I regret saying we have the same father. He never abandoned me. He was just very, he's a womanizer. He really likes women. So we bonded on the Facebook moments and putting the women that you're dating over your daughter. So I just want to say, just in case my father tunes in live to Facebook, we're good, man. We're good. But yeah, I think you needed that scene in order to make the story work. The scenes that you picked really do show that arc very, very well with what she's processed and what she let go. So yeah, well done.
And I mean, you mentioned sort of Robert a little bit there, Helen, and he's unlike sort of Lily and the other characters. He's not given any kind of redemptive arc whatsoever, really. He's just he's a bad dad at the beginning, and he's still kind of a bad dad at the end, really. And when we see him, he's just she's obviously just left, and he's just sort of left behind on his own. I mean, for you, was that the right screenwriting choice for you, Helen?
Yeah, I think whenever you look at character, there has to be consequences, and they don't always have to be negative consequences. They can be positive consequences. And I think see in the chat someone's asked about why Lily then picks up the flyer to become a counsellor. The consequence of her going for that therapy session was to realise that she had something to offer and wanted to build on that, is my interpretation. So, there's a consequence for her going to that therapist. Otherwise, why doesn't she just talk to Daphne about it? Every scene in film and TV there's a reason it's there. It's not just, to fill time usually. So it has to earn its place. And I feel that you don't have to give, the idea about Robert, specifically, is that you're not meant to like him. You're not meant to sit there and think, oh, but Lily, if you just gave him one more chance. You're meant to kind of come away from it going, yes, I feel like you're empowered, you've changed. And she wouldn't do that if he actually ended up being a nice guy in the end, or was like, I'm really sorry, come back to me, because it would happen again. So that's not a satisfying ending. So I think when you're thinking about these characters is what's the consequence? He didn't change. The consequence is he stays the same character he was at the beginning. And this time he is alone. So his consequence is much worse than when he started. Whereas Lily made the journey, changed, and therefore her consequence is a happier one. So consequences, yeah.
And he's the villain.
Yeah.
And he is not given his own arc. This isn't supposed to be about, and they will eventually find their happiness. She's got to find hers. And I think the writers out there who are watching know that a really good villain also has his own perspective and believes that he's not the villain. So whenever Robert is talking, he's talking about what a victim he is, because he believes he's a victim. And it's actually what makes him a more three-dimensional character. He's not doing things to inflict pain on his daughter. He's doing things out of selfishness because he believes this is what he needs and deserves. And that's what's constantly coming through with him. And also the reason why we start to learn that he's not going to change, and that that's not what the story is about.
And I think it's actually a really important thing to follow up, because you set up in the beginning this idea that actually, not all relationships are equal in that sort of father-daughter way, and that you don't have to, your family doesn't have to be the one that you were born into. It can be this, this chosen family. So then, by the end, to kind of say, it's okay to walk away is a really strong, powerful message. And I found that as a woman, as a daughter of a man, probably not very dissimilar to Robert, that actually it was a really encouraging and empowering message, because women especially, I think we take on this sort of role of keeping the family together. There's a lot of responsibility for being the one that keeps in contact, all of that lot. So it was actually a really refreshing way of reminding us that it's okay to walk away from that and to choose your family in whatever way that looks like. So I appreciated the ending in that way.
I think that there was a question from Natasha way up in the list of questions somewhere that was asking about casting and about whether or not Tracy had the actors in mind when she was writing. And I know she did talk about casting on your podcast, Pilar. And I think from what she was saying, that the actor that played Robert was actually like more of a comedian, I think, or more of a comedic actor. He was then sort of casting playing against cast. I mean, and I do think she cast this film brilliantly. I think they did really bring something to it. And do you think that helped maybe with the characterization of Robert, that it was perhaps played by someone who was coming from a slightly more of a comedic background and didn't sort of make the character feel too kind of dark or bleak or heavy or anything like that?
Yes, I do. So French Stewart, I believe, and he was a friend, and she was just doing sort of a reading in their living room, and he was just sort of subbing in as the dad. You know, this was before anything was cast officially at all, and she wasn't thinking about him for the role. And the depth and understanding that he brought to that role just in the cold read, in that little reading, made her just lock him in. And again, what I see in watching his portrayal is he takes all those moments where he's feeling victimized, where he's feeling like he needs something, where he's feeling entitled, and he says them with such conviction because he realizes that's how the character thinks. And I do think it's the script. He picked that up on with the script, but as an actor, he was like, that's what I'm going to play. And so I do think it was an unconventional casting, but it absolutely worked.
And just to sort of complete Natasha's question there, do you know if Tracy did have any of the actors who in mind that you did end up, well, you know, actually playing the roles while you were developing the script with her?
Not while we were developing the script, but also it didn't come up. Tracy is always has her director's hat on and is always thinking about casting along the way and is always having conversations with lots of people about her vision. So I can't say she wasn't already thinking about it. I know originally the character of Lily, she wanted that character to be non-binary like Tracy is, but when the idea of Barbie Ferreira came up, it was like, oh gosh, you know, she was such a Barbie fan. So, and who isn't? So when that opportunity came up, she grabbed it. And I think she has a fun story about sort of chasing John Leguizamo. Like she got him in her head, and she like booked a plane ticket and just went and like said, you know, I want you to be in this. She is a real lesson, a real masterclass in being an independent filmmaker. And I would urge people to follow her and to listen to any other interviews she's had because she got this script made.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, Helen, just sort of while we're on the sort of subject of casting, I mean, when you're writing your screenplays, do you have particular actors just in mind, even just to sort of help shape the characters and the way they kind of talk and act and move?
It's a tricky one because sometimes I think most writers will know that you could ask 10 different people and they'll give you 10 different advice about whether you should, you know, write with a person in mind or not. I think there are moments where I've perhaps lent on a specific performance of an actor rather than the actor themselves. But of course, in doing so, you have to just be really careful that you're not then borrowing characteristics that exist somewhere else and that you're trying to make it your own. So again, I think it's sort of just being quite self-aware about, well, what is it about this character that they're portraying, that they're playing? Why is it that they are coming to mind? How similar are these two characters? How different am I making them? And why is it that I feel that this particular person would fit this particular role? And I particularly like the example that you've given, Pilar, about how Tracy just fell in love with the way that the character was read. I think that tells you a lot about the writing of that character. And if it's written well, it will be portrayed incredibly well. But obviously, you know, that intimate connection with the actor and the work is what makes it a success. So I think there's so much that influences the characters that we write, and I think it's always good to just reflect on what it is about that person that's making you think of that role particularly.
So just before we bring Nathan up again, just to sort of ask some final questions. I see there's still quite a few more in the chat there, although people have got onto the Odyssey now, which is not a good thing, I don't think, if they start talking about that in the chat. But Pilar, I just wanted to ask you, obviously we looked at some individual scenes, but were there, any sort of overall craft lessons that you think writers could take from Tracy's screenplay and apply to their own work?
Well, like I said in the beginning, definitely being open to fictionalizing something, even if it was inspired by real life. The more open you are to the what ifs, the possibilities, the worst things that could have happened, the more you'll be able to be free creatively. And that was definitely what happened here. Tracy also had certain themes, that theme of found family that she really wanted to bring out in this. And a lot of the story choices were made around that, getting there. To be honest with you, that was something that I was learning about as she was developing it, something I had to get my brain around, like, oh, this is a big message that you want. And also, I would say that balance of sentiment and comedy, that if you do have something this sentimental, and I dare you not to cry in this movie, the comedy, the absurdity, the just the, or even the joy and the fun, make sure that that's coming through, because that was something that was always front and center in every scene, even though it was going to get to some heavier places. So I guess those would be the things that would be good craft takeaways.
And Helen, how about you? I mean, after obviously reading the script and watching the film, and then was there anything that you would take either from that experience, or maybe even just from the discussion today, that you might now apply to your own scripts moving forward?
Yeah, I think something that I really appreciated about this script was how much I connected to it, how much of it was so relatable, and how emotive it was. And you can only really do that if you dig deep enough in the emotion of the moment. So making sure that the scene earns its place, that it drives the plot forward, and that it has a purpose. It feeds into the next scene, or the next corresponding scene. And I know whenever I've tried to write from perhaps a personal experience, there are sometimes I've thought I've gone deep enough, and I haven't. And this was such a good reminder that if you don't dig deep enough into that emotion, then it just becomes a bit like an admin moment. It's something that just gets you surface level through to the next bit. But every scene has to be really deep and emotional. There has to be a reason for it to be there, even if it's completely loaded in subtext. So if you're writing from that personal experience, really digging into that, and if you're not ready to do that, then maybe this is a script that you need to keep working on, and it's something that you need to find someone to help you shape that, or to like Pilar, tease it out of you in a way that becomes relatable. So yeah, that's my biggest takeaway, is just how emotive this script was in the face of these dark themes.
Great, thank you. So let's just sort of bring Nathan up once more, just to ask a few more questions that people have been asking in the chat.
Great stuff, great stuff. So let's carry on with Diogo then. I love that Lily contemplates being a counsellor by the end of the film. Why counsellor by the end of the film? Was that always the objective for her character?
That I don't remember. I don't. I will say that the scenes with the therapist, that does come from real life. Tracy made her therapist cry. So I don't remember the discussion of that, but I'm glad it's there, because I do think a young woman coming out of it with, how could this change my career, is also a very positive thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's ask this question then from Jolie. I hope I'm saying that right, Jolie. Which scene or sequence changed the most from the early drafts you saw to the final shooting script?
One thing I noticed, and you'll probably notice it too with the script that you were given versus what was on screen, was the character of Stephanie. right? So Daphne is the friend that she is also helping, who is disabled and also encourages Lily to get angry every once in a while. She has a lot of power. And what was fun about that character was that she wasn't always the most likable character either. So in the original script, and you'll see it in the script you were given, she's bossy. She's like, because Lily's also her employee. Now, one thing I noticed is any scene where she was like that was cut. I understand why. It could be misinterpreted. And this whole balance of likability, right? That's the people have issues. I think my sensibility tends to be like, let's make everybody a little edgier and dirtier and nastier. But that wouldn't have worked here. So I do see why it was cut. But that seems to be the biggest thing. Anything that was where she was like too on the line of unlikability was out.
I have one more question, if that's okay, Luke.
Yes, please do.
This question is from Valeria. It's a craft-related question. Since you write everything from intention, how do you know when it comes across on the page and when it doesn't? I think it's almost like, how do you know when to stop?
Yeah, I'm just trying to interpret this one. I think I'm just wondering if you mean sort of more, so that everything that's on there is earning its keep, if you see what I mean. So that characters are being purposeful, that you're not drifting off and that you're staying the course. I tend to revert to, in my editing process, I go back to a little bit of geeky scene structure and just kind of really break down how that scene is unfolding and whether or not it would be sharper. I just play with it. Would it be better if I ended it here, or started it later, or is it clear enough? Could this big chunk of text actually be 3 words of subtext? And how will that impact the next scene? And so it really comes out in the editing, I would say. You certainly wouldn't do that. Well, I wouldn't do that in my first draft. I would just literally vomit draft it and then really refine and tease out and try and make it visual. Visual storytelling is always a really good way of doing that. I hope that's what you meant.
Nathan, I think that he might be referring to when I was talking about accepting your script as ready when you've met your intentions. And by meeting your intentions, what I meant was writers, when they're starting, they have a movie in their mind. Okay. They have intentions toward a certain character, a certain arc, themes, a feeling, a mood, a look. And when you're done with it, if your story and the tone and the genre, if the feel of it, the read meets your intentions, you're done. Meets those intentions. You're done until somebody pays you to start rewriting it to help meet their intentions, because they got to sell it. Okay. So that's what I meant.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Nathan, for coming up and reading out some of the questions from our
Anytime, pal, anytime.
Very active chat today. Thank you. Pilar, we can't let you go without sort of mentioning the On the Page podcast, because it's I believe it's the 1000th and final episode is airing this Friday, I think.
This Friday, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, it's an incredible achievement to get to 1000 episodes. So congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Congratulations.
I think I've been listening for about 10 years. I think I've been listening to it. So, I just wanted to say for myself, I mean, I found it invaluable for my own writing, and I'm sure I'm speaking for a lot of people if I just say thank you so much for all the wisdom and the insights that you've imparted about screenwriting over the years.
Oh, Thank you for listening. It's really been fun. And I'm very excited. The Writers Guild Foundation is going to be archiving it as their first podcast in their digital library, so that people can go back and hear episodes. Until that happens, it's going to be staying on platforms. So anybody who wants to go back and listen to anything from 250 to 1,000, there's lots of wonderful people I've gotten to interview over the years. So it stays there, and all they have to go to is on the page on anywhere that they get their podcasts.
And even though the podcast is finishing, I believe you're still going to be teaching and consulting.
Absolutely, absolutely. So anyone who wants to work with me story to script the way that I work with Tracy is able to do so. You just go to my website, onthepage.tv, and look at the coaching. And I do this for feature and for TV. Also, I am teaching at UNCSA in the MFA department, which I love. And I also get to teach for organizations when they ask. So I'll be coaching for the Mia market in Italy online, unfortunately, on September. So yes, I am working, and always happy to do so. People can get in touch with me anytime.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And yeah, thank you, Helen, as well, for joining us again today. I believe you have a newsletter that people can subscribe to.
Yes, I do. Yeah, it's settled around the business of screenwriting. So if that's the kind of thing that interests you, it's available on my website, which is my name, helentompson.co.uk. Thompson without the H, or you can have a look at on LinkedIn and read it from there. So they come out every Wednesday. I'll be there tomorrow, which is about how to get the writer's voice, how to find your writer's voice.
Great. And thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for taking part once more.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
And yeah, thank you so much to Nathan for coming up and asking everyone's questions. And thank you also to Louise, who's doing the back end producing today. Yeah, I just want to say thank you so much for everyone who attended from all around the world, actually, and for taking part and for all your questions. Script Club is taking a bit of a break over the summer, but we will be back in September and October with both some more online sessions and also with some live in-person discussions. In the meantime, we're going to be putting up on Centreframe's YouTube channel fairly shortly the recording of the live discussion we did with MJ Bassett about the film With Sonia, and also the discussion we did at Brighton Rocks Film Festival a couple of weeks ago with Sir David Hare about his script for The Hours. So please keep an eye out for those. They'll be coming up. I'll be up on the Centreframe channel over the next few weeks. But in the meantime, yeah, I hope very much that you'll join us for one of our next Script Club discussions. And until then, thank you very much and good night.